It would be only fair of me to start covering the actual history of Hyrule by starting at the beginning. We don't know a lot about the events surrounding the creation of the world, but we do have the creation myth and a map from an adorable robot demonstrating what appears to be a prehistory version of Hyrule. Based on research and lore, I want to take a look at the dawn of time of the lands that would become Hyrule. What we know of the creation of High Planet comes in the form of a prosaic legend, which specifically details the creation of land masses, the natural order of the world, and the creation of life. For the sake of giving a refresher, I've created a visual aid of sorts that details how this went down. Without further ado, the Golden Goddess creation story. Let's examine this for a moment. First, this legend mirrors a lot of what we see in similar creation myths for different religions in the real world. It's short, detailed, and told from a third-person perspective, which speaks to the possibility that it's a legend based on the interpreted ideas of what the species of Hyrule believe happened. It's worth questioning whether this tale is actually canonical to the formation of the planet, or perhaps just a way for the species of the world to explain their existence. But let's continue. We will get into that later. The first part of the story is about how there was nothing save a formless void before the goddesses showed up. It quickly moves into the story about how Din created the land and cultivated the Red Earth. Let's talk about that for a moment. What is Red Earth? Red Earth, also known as Terra Rosa, is soil found in areas where the climate is warm and humid, such as in tropical and subtropical regions. It is usually fertile and good for agriculture. Red soil is formed from the weathering of rocks that contain iron oxides. We can use this as a hint to the early conditions of the world. Next, the tale covers Nehru, who created law and order in the world. It's important to make a distinction here. This isn't referring to human laws, but instead the laws of nature. This most likely refers to the conditions for life to exist, and about how the world functions as a solar body. I take this to include everything from weather to plate tectonics. We can see a demonstration of this when Nehru turns the skies blue, further indicating the creation of an atmosphere. Finally, the legend closes the creation story with Pharaoh creating all life forms. This is straightforward to me, and I would assume that this includes all life forms, including the pantheon of gods, goddesses, and demons, not just what we think of as earthly life forms. We have some evidence that this is true, given that we have a small amount of mythology about Hylia and Demise. If I were to define the creation of the world according to purely scientific terms, I think the creation story is a great guess about how things came together. We have a landmass which becomes habitable according to the laws of our own world, and then the development of life. Since it's a fictional universe, created intentionally, we can treat this as accurate until the Zelda team provides information that contradicts or changes that. From a religious perspective, it's clear to me that the creation myth draws inspiration from multiple real-world religions. Shinto, Greek, and Heliopolitan creation myths all feature three deities that are responsible for the creation of the world. How does that stack up against what we know about the prehistory world? Well, thanks to Skipper, we have a map. The early surface map shows that most of what would later become Hyrule was once covered in water. On the map, we can make out Faerun and part of the Gerudo Desert. Something I want to point out is that while the eastern side of the map clearly demonstrates that Faerun is surrounded on all sides by water, the western landmap is cut off at the top. If you follow the age of construction materials at the ancient columns, along with the map of the area from the stone tablets in Skyward Sword, it would suggest that at least Tabantha Frontier was not underwater. Though we can't see it, I would speculate that a very young form of Elden volcano was likely above sea level at that point at a minimum. By the time of the events of Skyward Sword, there are already signs of an outer caldera collapse, a further indicator of its age. The state of the early world doesn't seem to contradict the creation myth. In the visual explanation in Ocarina of Time, we can clearly see several locations, such as Eldin, Faerun, and Gerudo Canyon, which was the Lanayru region in prehistoric times. By the end of the creation story, the goddesses depart, leaving the Triforce in their wake, thereby establishing the sacred realm. This introduces new questions for me. If the sacred realm didn't exist prior to the creation of the world, what was the home of the goddesses? It seems likely by all evidence that the sacred realm is not just in the sky, but specifically above the cloud barrier. In most mythology, there are notions of multiple levels and layers to the heavens. While the creation story doesn't directly confirm that, it's a decent assumption based on everything we know. Hey there, I hope you enjoyed this look at the creation myth for The Legend of Zelda. I enjoy sharing this work, and if you enjoy it too, let me know. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, stay curious.